SMU is going to face its second big-time thrower of the football of the season.
The way TCU can win this game is the same way the Frogs can lose it.
You are Locked On SMU, your daily podcast on the SMU Mustangs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to this Locked On TCU, Locked On SMU crossover here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Thanks so much for making us your first listen and for spending part of your day with us. Our episode today is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if the bet wins, you can win up to $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. So download the FanDuel app today. Hey, joining me today on this crossover, the new host of Locked On TCU, formerly Locked On HBCU, Darrion Gray. What's going on, my friend?
I'm happy, man. Dallas, Fort Worth, connecting TCU, SMU, my first crossover as a part of Locked On Horned Frogs. I'm happy to do it with you.
Man, let's go ahead and just bounce right into this thing, man, because when you and I were talking before we wanted to do this, it seems like both sides of the perimeter, not exactly the line of scrimmages, but those wide receiver corner matchups, that pass catcher secondary matchup is what's going to win or lose this game for both of these squads, really.
Yeah, you see, coming out of the Abilene Christian game, it's a little bit difficult to evaluate TCU because you had the big time matchup versus North Carolina, and then you had the game versus Abilene Christian, which going into that matchup the entire week, I'm sitting here like trap game. And it seems like they fell victim to it. And one of the positions that played poorly was cornerback. The reason I mentioned trap game is because are they closer to who they were versus the Tar Heels or versus Abilene Christian? When you only have two games and they're two completely different types of matchups, it's kind of difficult to evaluate from time to time. But the cornerbacks were a point of contention for head coach Sonny Dykes, who Mustangs know very well. But Coach Dykes talked about the cornerbacks, and he was very displeased. When I hear that we're not happy about cornerbacks, I instantly think about big plays. I instantly think about players who can get 75-yard touchdowns or 63-yard touchdowns, or quite frankly, to not beat around the bush. I think about people named Romello Brinson because he's the type of guy who I would be scared of no matter what. But if I'm hearing that my cornerbacks aren't playing up to par, okay, now we really need to watch this Brinson guy.
Well, Romello Brinson started out the first two games of the season with 75-yard or 70-yard touchdowns against East Texas A&M and against Baylor on the first plays from scrimmage in those games. But it's not as if he's alone in terms of the big play capability because, you got a true freshman wide receiver in Jalen Cooper who has really come on. There's an outside chance they get their number one receiver, Jordan Hudson, back. Talking about SMU here. But it's interesting that we're talking about the secondary as we start a show because TCU's hasn't been very good. SMU's has been completely redone from how it started out the season. You still got Deuce Harmon on one corner, but now you've got Jalen Davis Robertson as the opposite corner. Ahmad Moses, who was the free safety, he's now playing nickel, and Jalen Milner-Jones, who is in competition to be the starting nickel, is now playing free safety. And they're in their second week of this realignment, and they're going up against a team in TCU with Eric McAllister and Joseph Manchak and all the other weapons that Josh Hoover has to throw to. Oh, and by the way, Josh Hoover himself, who's a very good thrower of the football. And to me, when I look at this, it is, okay, whose playmakers are going to make the most plays for their quarterback and whose secondary is going to be the least bad? Because both of them, in terms of pass defense, when you isolate it to the back four or maybe even the back five, have not been particularly, confident. They're not going to make anybody confident in how they've played so far this year.
And I think that this is the point for TCU where, TCU has two games, SMU has three, right? So where you have your stance on your defensive back, it's probably a little bit more solid than mine. For me, I'm quite fluid. This feels like this is the point where TCU secondary is going to have to prove it because I liked what I saw week one, like I said, versus North Carolina. I was happy with that. I thought that was an impressive showing. We can have questions about who North Carolina is going to be in 2025, but that's what comes with beginning of the year matchups. And then you go play Abilene Christian, where it's kind of a step down in competition. And you could argue that the defensive backs were just overlooking the matchup. I need to see this week. I'm not sold that it's a bad unit. I am concerned about the unit. So I think that third game will really tell a lot for where TCU stands right now. And I think that we'll be having a much different conversation next week, because either we're going to be saying we really need to be concerned, or it's, oh, that was just Abilene Christian. So this is going to be the matchup where we do it. And one guy I want to bring up on the offensive side for the Frogs is Jordan Dwyer, who I think is really on the way to becoming their number one wide receiver. Eric McAllister just struggled to get going against both North Carolina and Abilene Christian. Meanwhile,
he did.
Josh Hoover and Jordan Dwyer have had a fantastic connection. The transfer out of Idaho has been absolutely amazing. I think that he has the ability to push downfield. He has some of the things that you see in Romello Brinson, not the 75-yard play all the time, but he's a guy who can push downfield. And against North Carolina, they had to respect his speed. So now he had the comeback routes. And you see a lot of that with Brinson. So I think SMU fans can be pretty aware of what they're going to have to watch out for, even if they haven't watched Dwyer, because some of those, not every one of them, but some of those have been shown with Brinson as well.
Now, I got two questions for you here, because both on flip sides of the matchup, because SMU has struggled to defend the middle of the field. Now, they're getting two linebackers back from injury. Alex Kilgore and Zakai Barker are expected to play, but they have struggled to defend the middle of the field. So I want to ask you, how equipped is TCU to potentially take advantage of that? And also on the flip side of things, Eric McAllister and Josh Hoover, them not getting going together this year is kind of alarming to me, considering that it's Eric McAllister's second year in the program after coming over from Boise State. So, that to me is interesting. But also on the flip side, with SMU on offense, they got two dudes that are the size of tight ends that they play a lot together. Matthew Hibner and RJ Maryland, who was a tight end. They converted him to wide receiver, and he's 240 pounds. So how do you think, one, TCU could take advantage of SMU's lack of pass defense over the middle? And two, how do you think TCU can defend all this size?
I think that not being able to defend at any point of the field when you're going against Josh Hoover is concerning. I think that TCU has a real variety pack. I kind of compared them to a variety pack earlier this week on the show, where you dig in and it doesn't matter which chip that you bring out, you're pretty happy with what you get, right? And that's how I feel about TCU's wide receiving core. And also, in addition to that, if you want to be, a little bit more traditional, if you want to be a little bit more standard, the tight ends, they have good tight ends who can attack the middle of the field. You look at a guy like Manjack, who is going to be able to attack the middle of the field. Typically, McAllister and Dwyer are boundary players. They are perimeter players for the most part. But the other guys who don't get as much attention, they can operate in that section of the field. And then as far as on the defensive side of the ball, for TCU, we haven't seen that. That'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to put the linebackers in coverage more than they have been, right? I think that TCU has a solid front seven, but we've primarily seen it challenged in the run game, which I'll be very excited to see with Harden and Johnson. But to the question that you asked, of course, we've seen them be challenged in the run game, not so much in the passing game. That is still an unknown. The thing about TCU, the thing about all programs, right? Like, let's not even just do TCU and SMU. The thing about all programs right now is, for the most part, you're trying to figure out who you are. And I don't think that 80% of programs really know who they are at this point. You have some who say, we know we have an elite defense, or we know we have an elite offense. And a lot of that is based off of people who rolled over from last year. But I think TCU is still trying to find their way. I really do. I think that a guy like Ansel Demba in the middle of that defense on the interior defensive line, he's someone who can really muck up shop and can make things difficult. But there's a lot of questions. You got guys on the edge. You got guys at linebacker. They weren't a great defense last year. You're going to need them to be solid. But it's too difficult to say either way, in my opinion. And I hate straddling the fence like this, but they're still in a figuring it out process in my mind.
I want to get back to the line of scrimmage and the run games for both sides of this later on in the show when we close up shop. But coming up next here, as we do this Locked On SMU, Locked On TCU crossover, Grayson Singleton and Darrion Gray. Coming up next, this is the last scheduled running of the Iron Skillet. And I want to talk about that, but also what it means as a macro perspective for college football. So stay tuned here on this Locked On crossover here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's almost the weekend. Time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more time you order, these players delivered when it matters the most. Let's go ahead and break it down. For SMU, man, I've just loved how much Jalen Cooper has stepped up and with his play with the absence of Jordan Hudson, with the long touchdowns, the route running, and the connection that he's built with Kevin Jennings. And when the pressure has been on for him to step up because of injury, he has come through. And if you've been watching week after week, this performance is starting to become a trend, not a fluke. And just like Jalen Cooper has delivered for SMU, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you could save every Saturday you order. Stack it up all season, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive and fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply, and the promo period runs through November the 18th. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if the bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use all the way across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however I want to bet. Y'all know me by now. I love parlaying those player props together, but you can also build same-game parlays or even jump in as the action is unfolding with live bets. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to get started and place your first $5 bet. All right, back here on this Locked On crossover, Grayson Singleton, Locked On SMU, Darrion Gray, Locked On TCU, the new host formerly of Locked On HBCU. Okay, so Darrion, I want to get into this because this Saturday is going to be the last scheduled running of the Iron Skillet. And this is just another symptom in this rearrangement of college football. And there's a lot of good that has come out of this. Like, obviously, we need to pay players. The conferences are a little bit wonky now as a result of some things, media rights and whatnot. But the rivalries cannot be allowed to just keep disappearing. And, you know, Oklahoma and Oklahoma State, Bedlam, no longer played. That hits a sore spot for me as an Oklahoma State alum. USC and Notre Dame, it starts to seem like that could fizzle out. So, and now the Iron Skillet, I think, is one of the ones that is now endangered and probably could be dead for a while. And to me, this is so backwards in the way we're going about this because college football and the way the College Football Playoff Committee has said that it is going to evaluate teams' resumes should allow for you to do that. Because when you play big-time opponents and when you play more quality opponents, if you beat them, you're held in a higher regard than if you beat somebody that is of lesser quality. If you lose to them, you're not penalized as much. And that's the new way that the College Football Playoff Committee has said that they are going to evaluate a lot of these at-large teams. So with that in mind, that should allow you and make you more excited to play these games, not make you feel like, oh, I'm risking our national championship hopes on this one game. So to me, the fact that we're not playing this, and I'm not doing this in the vein of calling out either school. I'm not trying to do that. I'm just talking about this as a perspective as a college football fan here.
Right.
You know, like you should be playing these games because now you have the room for the margin for error to be able to lose a game like this and still be okay.
Yeah, and you know what? That's what's interesting about this is you are completely right. And I want to attack this from a kind of a macro and a micro as well, right? Because when it comes to this game specifically, one of the reasons that TCU wanted to cancel it, because let's be real, TCU is the one who wanted to go ahead and give this thing the axe, is that SMU was a G5 program. When they decided to stop doing this, they weren't in the ACC yet. Now, I don't know when you can pull the plug or say, psych, we're going to take that back. Let's go ahead and keep this game going. I don't know at what point you could do it, but the decision was made while SMU was a G5 team. And with that in mind, you take away the fandom, you take away the emotion, you simply go with the logic. Saying we want to take away a yearly G5 game makes a lot of sense. So I can understand it from that standpoint. But now that they're an ACC school, I do think that this comes back eventually. It's just a matter of when. It doesn't seem like Coach Dykes really has any interest in doing it. Doesn't seem like he really is keen on playing this game. And one of the things I had read, like, look, this is my first Iron Skillet. I've said this before. This is my first Iron Skillet. I'm trying to get into it, but it's leaving next week, or at least, well, technically next week, but it leaves next year. It's not. It's hard to get into it. It's hard to dive into it and get emotionally invested. But I think that this is something that has to go out with a bang, because you're completely right. It would be smart to continue to do it. It'd be easy and it'd be consistent. You want to make sure you do it every year. But there's also the emotional side of it. And I think that college football is unique in the way that there's so much hatred on a weekly basis. I get to play this team. I get to play this team. I get to play this team, right? Like, that's not the case in the NFL as much, right? Like, you get one, maybe two really hated opponents. So you get a maximum of 4 weeks of hate if you're talking about divisional players or divisional foes that you play twice a year. In college football, you can hate SMU, you can hate Baylor, you can hate Tech, you can hate Texas, you can hate as many. You can have 5 games where it's like, yeah, we can't stand that. You know, I told myself I wouldn't wear any blue or red this week. That's just what I decided to do, because you know what? It's SMU hate week. It's Iron Skillet week. That's what makes college football special. And the fact that so many teams have been stripping this from us, stripping the Oklahoma versus Oklahoma State. We recently just had, I think, West Virginia and Pitt. They just played again. So, like, you know, I think in the last couple of years, they started to renew that rivalry in the backyard. So to me, these things are paused, not ended. You're going to see them come back, but it's just a matter of when does it happen? And at the end of the day, these schools are so intertwined, both geographically and also emotionally, that the hatred and that animosity is going to live on for generations. And I don't just mean like, you know, mom to daughter to son to father. Like, I don't mean that, but like just literally classes of 16, 20, 24, 28. Like, that's going to be passed on with different classes. So I think once it does come back, you'll still see it. It'll still be prevalent. But I don't think you see it for a good 5 to 10 years, to be honest.
Yeah, and what you're talking about, you know, you brought this up with TCU and SMU, and Bedlam also falls into this category too. They are right down the street from each other. Like, economically, it makes the most sense to keep these going. But what you just alluded to was what makes college football different than the NFL, and that is tribalism. And tribalism is the essence of this sports intrigue. If we're going to be real, it's tribalism. So the fact that you're undercutting what makes your sport different from professional sports, to me, is kind of counterintuitive, in my opinion. But you go back to when TCU decided to give this thing the axe because SMU was still a G5 program at that point. Remember this, a lot of times teams schedule their non-conferences 5 to 10 years in advance, which I think is, you know, not good either, because the world changes so much in 5 to 10 years. So I think you have to allow yourself the room to be able to do that. I'll bet you now TCU can look at this and be like, yeah, I mean, this could have been an opportunity as a resume enhancer because SMU is now in the ACC. But I do think, though, that a game like this has the room to come back, especially because all of the conferences are now moving toward 9-game conference schedules. The SEC is going to do it here in the next couple of years, too. So I do think that if you're going to add a 9-game conference schedule, I think a lot of people are coming around, at least us in the media, are coming around to every Power 5 team or Power 4 team needs to play 10 Power 4 games. That just needs to be the case. I think the room to bring back these rivalries is reappearing, but the fact that they're going away and the fact that we've allowed them to go away, to me, doesn't sit right.
Let me jump in here. Let me jump in and say this.
No, go ahead.
In a few years, it might not have to schedule it because you might see SMU in the Big 12, right? Let me throw this out there. I know, right? I'm about to get crazy.
We broached this topic before.
Oh, okay, cool. So one of the things that TCU said is, because, you know, people are saying, well, they're in the ACC now. Well, who knows how long they're going to be in the ACC? North Carolina might leave. Clemson might leave. And I think it was one of them might leave. They probably said Florida State might leave. Miami. So they had predicted that maybe the ACC is in danger of becoming the new Pac-12, right? And if that happens, maybe SMU comes on down and gets geographic again and says we're going to be with some of our Texas brothers. Maybe we're going to be back with Tech. We're going to be back Tech, Baylor, TCU, right? Maybe that happens and we no longer have to schedule it. it just is naturally in there. So I don't know. Even in the Big 12 matrix.
Yeah, no, you could be right. And look, Texas is never going to go back to the Big 12 from the SEC. But I mean, now you've got Houston, you've got TCU, you've got Baylor, you got Tech, and SMU could eventually find its way over, to the Big 12. I mean, that is a thought that is out there. Not a prevailing thought, but it is something that is out there. So, we could see a whole Texas gamut here real soon. The ACC, I don't know if the ACC will ever become the Pac-12 because the ACC has its own media rights deals. That ultimately would serve to the death of the Pac-12 was that they couldn't get a media rights deal signed. So, that'll all be interesting. But, it is the last scheduled running of the Iron Skillet, and I do think it's a shame that some of these rivalries are coming to an end, especially because tribalism is such a key component to college football. But coming up next, Darrion and I will be right back. We're going to give our game picks and also talk about another factor that could sway this game in either team's direction on the other side. Keep it here on Locked On SMU, Locked On TCU crossover.
Today's episode is brought to you by Mazda, and Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than just simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, with more IIH top safety picks than anyone else since or as of August 2025. This is the place to be. I don't care. I need a new car, and trust and believe I am looking at Mazda. From footwork to breath work, athletes sweat all the details, and Mazda brings the same intention to how we craft every model. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls, and all-wheel drive that's standard for every crossover SUV. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved.
All right, we're going to wrap this thing up here talking about, before we get to the game picks, you mentioned the line of scrimmage and the running game for both of these teams. And I want to talk about that here for a second because SMU's defensive front has been pretty good, especially against the run, and they can put pressure on the quarterback. Now, I found this. Kavorian Barnes, the number one running back for TCU, he is doubtful, or he's questionable, with a lower leg injury as of Tuesday. Do you have an even more current update on
Not Tuesday. Him? Tuesday is the best update that we have, and the next update will be on Thursday. So This will come out on Thursday. You'll hear this on Thursday, and later on today, you will get the update that you've been looking for. To me, it's the most important thing. Like, I know some people feel like the cornerbacks are, and that's definitely important. But to me, going against this SMU front, they're going to be trying to stop the run. You don't want to put Hoover in a situation where it's one-dimensional. Though I think, he can go out there and he can have a shootout, and we definitely got to talk about Hoover versus Jennings, right? But the idea of establishing the run with a physical running back like Kavorian Barnes against this front is very important to me because I don't think Hoover's been sacked. I really don't. Maybe he's had one. I would have to look, but I don't think that Hoover has been sacked up to this point. So when you're looking at his game, if you can run the football, that's a better chance that your quarterback stays clean. So this is all about complementary football for the Frogs. I want to be able to run the ball so that I can pass the ball without as much pressure. You want to be able to gas these guys, keep punching the defensive line in the mouth. This is going to be very important. A lot of attention is on Hoover. A lot of attention is on Jennings. But you know what, Grayson, I'm really happy that we didn't go to them first, because all of the things around them have to make the situation as clean as possible so that these quarterbacks can be effective. So while we establish the scene and then we get to the main event, I think it's a really good approach. Not to pat ourselves on the back, but I think this is a good coincidence that we landed into to leave Jennings and Hoover for last.
Yeah, I think so too. And I will ask you this, because TJ Harden is running the ball for over 5 yards a carry. Chris Johnson Jr. approaching the same. SMU's running game has been excellent this year. How confident are you that TCU can stop that SMU running attack?
Not that confident. I'll be honest with you. Not really. I thought they struggled against Abilene Christian. I like Ansel Demba. TCU is so frustrating. TCU is so frustrating right now because North Carolina the game against North Carolina looked really good. It looked really good. And then you follow up with Abilene Christian and you have question marks. Matter of fact, I think that you could probably relate because I was listening to one of the recent shows that you had, and you were talking about how the beginning of the game versus Baylor versus the end, right? And it's like, what do you value, right? Because to me, I'm sitting here, you let Baylor walk you down. And that's what's going in my head. I'm like, okay, you're susceptible. But then you may think, well, look at how we played the first 3 quarters, 3.5. We just have to finish. But nah, now it's questions of who are you really? And while your questions come from 3.5 quarters versus the last 7.5 minutes, the questions for TCU that make that same conclusion is game 1 versus game 2. So that's that's kind of the difficult part of doing the evaluation. But I do think that the interior defensive line is something that I have praised, but it specifically comes down to Ansel Demba in the middle. Big 92. Let me make sure it's not 97, but I think it's 92.
Yeah. And, here was my thought on that Baylor game. And what eventually got SMU's defense, I think, was attrition more than anything. I think second, the defensive coordinator, Scott Simons, went ultra conservative and just allowed Baylor and Sawyer Robertson to walk them down. But I said before the Baylor game is that if you get into a fireworks show with these dudes, you are likely going to lose because SMU, I just don't think, is built to win track meets. And I think it's similar here. And you mentioned the fact that TCU, you're not confident in Frogs stopping the run. And I think that's why this leads me to SMU winning this game, is because if SMU can run the ball and make this a lower possession type of game, we've already seen them lose a track meet just because the defense got too tired from being out there too long. I think if this is a more ball control game, and I'm not saying this is going to be 21-14 or something like that, but if this is a more ball control game, that plays into SMU's hands. I want to get to the quarterbacks here before we get to making predictions and stuff. Kevin Jennings, to me, is an enigma because he is good on the deep ball. He is excellent on outbreaking routes and throwing the ball toward the boundary, but there are some easier throws that he misses on. Meanwhile, Josh Hoover is just a big dude with a big arm, but he doesn't have a whole heck of a lot of mobility, which means if SMU can get pressure on him, this could be a long day for him.
Yeah, and I think that you're seeing a little bit more purposeful movement, and I think that purposeful movement for Hoover can really help with the pressure because, right, like you don't want him to have to try to run away from anybody. I think he moves decently, but you don't want him to have to be on the run all the time. He's not Jennings, right? Like that's not going to be something that he does as frequent. But when it comes to Hoover and moving him in the pocket, they've done a good job protecting him. They've done a good job protecting with personnel and schematics, which I think is important. You got to do both. It's kind of like wide receivers. Yeah, you can line them up man to man and it's press. You want to have them just beat the guy in front of them, but also let's move them around and get them some favorable matchups. So you want to allow your players to be players, but you also want to help them excel. So, and I think they've done that with Josh Hoover. And when it comes to the quarterback play, I'm going to be honest. I don't know if they can grind it out when you talk about SMU, because I think Jennings is going to want to take shots, and I think he's going to give you something. Like even that 75-yard touchdown against Baylor should have been an interception, right? I think Jennings will give you some things. You just got to take advantage of it, So that I think that Jennings is going to try to go after it, and I think it's going to lead to some fast-paced drives, whether that's successful or failed for SMU. And I think it's going to put TCU back on the field a decent amount. Now, if they're able to just commit to the run and they're able to do that, grind it out, then okay, we have a different conversation. But, I like to, when dealing in hypotheticals, I like to also say what I think is most likely. And what I think is most likely is that you're going to see SMU still try to be that explosive offense. And if we go in band for band, I think that TCU is going to be the team that pulls it out. And that's my prediction, because I think they are going to try to be into a real shootout, a real fast-paced 100-meter dash type of game, and I think that favors TCU.
If SMU is going to try to go bar for bar with TCU in terms of big play after big play after big play, and it's going to be quarterbacks and everybody's throwing for 350 plus, I think that does in fact favor TCU. But I do think SMU, if they want to, they will be able to run the ball because of the ability for them to be explosive. TCU is probably going to not be able to commit a whole lot of bodies to the box, which means a lot lighter of a workload for the offensive line. And the offensive line for SMU in terms of run blocking has been excellent this year. And with the way TJ Harden is unable to be tackled by one dude. I think if SMU wants to go that direction and uses the threat of being able to strike downfield to open up their running game, I think that bodes very well in their favor. But we are running out of time here. So, Darrion, go ahead. Give me the one key to the game that you think could turn this in favor of the team that you're going to win, that you think is going to win.
I think it's all going to come down to that QB. Josh Hoover has to be better than Kevin Jennings. Point blank, period. That's what's necessary. If TCU is going to win, I think that needs to happen.
So you think TCU is winning this one?
I do think TCU, because I do think they're going to go explosive play for explosive play, and I think it favors TCU. And I think that because when you go through, I think they had 15 drives with the starting offense. I think it's been 12 scores and 10 touchdowns, something like that. This has been a high-profile offense. So I think that I'm going with TCU because I really do think that SMU is going to struggle to stop them. I think SMU is going to have to make some stops to win this game, and I think TCU is not going to allow that to happen.
Garrett Riley's still calling plays over there, isn't he?
No, it's Browse. It's Browse.
That's right. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's right. Haven't said that name in a while.
No, but Kendall Browse, man, and he's got some. I like it too. I like some.
Kendall Browse is nice. I mean, before we found out what the other Browse, was covering up, I mean, we thought he was pretty all right too.
Hey now.
Hey, look. I think the key.
Hey, look, man. Hey. I don't know what Kendall had to do with that. I know Art had to do with that.
No. I am not one to blame the son for the sins of the father.
Okay, yeah. I'm just like, I'm gonna leave that one alone.
That is not me. But no, I will say this. I think SMU, is going to try to adjust some things that they did from that Baylor game, and I think if push does come to shove, Scott Simons will be more aggressive with the way that he deploys his defense in the fourth quarter, and I do think the running game for SMU is going to allow them to be multidimensional and maybe turn this game into the flow that the Mustangs want to do. So I'm gonna go with SMU in this one. I'm gonna go with them along the lines of 27-21, and I think SMU gets back on track with a good win over TCU. But that'll do it for our Locked On crossover here. Myself, Grayson Singleton, Locked On SMU. That's Darrion Gray, the new host of Locked On Horned Frogs. Give us a follow. You've seen our Twitters down below the entire time. Gray_Singleton2 for myself. South exclusives for Darrion Gray. We will talk to you guys tomorrow. As we keep counting you down to our Saturday matchup on Saturday morning between SMU and TCU. Thanks for making us your first listen. For your second listen, hey, make sure that you don't forget to check out Fire TV's college football kickoff in conjunction with Locked On. Drake Toll of Locked On Big 12 leads the conversation. He's joined by two-time AP Coach of the Year, Gary Patterson, former college star Jesse Holley, and Locked On's local experts. It's a college football preview only Locked On can do, and it is tonight on Fire TV. Catch it every Thursday on Fire TV. It's Locked On's college football kickoff. We'll talk to you tomorrow, everybody. Take it easy.